we are going to be presenting observation on how use of technology benefited learning in experimental biochemistry courses. My name is Natalya Voloshchuk. My colleague is Gina Moreno. We are at the Department of Biochemistry and Microbiology in School of Environmental and Biological Sciences at Rutgers University. We are going to talk today about the experimental biochemistry courses themselves, Canvas management side, open and affordable textbook program that courses participate in. Then we will move on to electronic laboratory notebook and lab archives in particular. And then we'll share user experience, both from students' perspective and instructors' perspective, on how the course management side and lab archives actually benefiting the learning. So first, experimental biochemistry courses. There are two experimental biochemistry courses that run in our school, in our department. Both courses are intended for biochemistry majors, but the course that is with the name 11-115-413 is also intended for biochemistry majors. This course is running in the fall semester, and generally we have 50 to 55 students enrolled. The idea is to introduce students in this course to the widely used experimental procedures in biochemistry. Second course that is following the 413 is smaller course. We have about 28 to 32 students enrolled, and only biochemistry major students, as I said before, are taking it. This course is offered every spring semester. In this course, students are working on a project where they express recombinant protein, purify, and then characterize the protein. Both courses meet for 12 weeks per semester, 5 hours of lab and 1 hour of lecture weekly. And in more detail, I just wanted to show you that the fall course is protocol based. The various topics are covered in the course, starting with buffers and then moving on to SDS page, Western ELISA. This course is part of the open and affordable textbook program where course content is organized on Canvas side. 414 is project based, as I said before, but the topics that are being covered are anything from DNA work, where plasmids are purified and restricted and analyzed, and then moving on to expression procedure, and then various purification, various chromatography techniques to purify the protein. And it finishes with protein characterization of secondary structure of a protein with circular dichroism. Again, course management side is on Canvas. Until recently, Sakai was used for both courses, but with the help of Joseph Yankas from the Rutgers Technology Office, we converted the courses to Canvas. Alright, so courses organized in Canvas into weekly modules, where, for example, under weekly module 5, we'll have protein purification, where students will see learning goals, they will see PowerPoint presentation, and then protocol that is required for particular laboratory work, and supporting information that is needed for the protocol. So for all 12 weeks we'll have modules on the site. In addition, laboratory reports, for example, is a very important part of the course. So there is a section where students will find all the relevant information on how to write laboratory report with laboratory checklists and so on. And also important in week 1, it's kind of organization week, and we using electronic laboratory notebook, and therefore lab archives links are provided in week 1 to the courses. So that is organization of the Canvas site for 11, 1, 15, 4, 13, in other words, the fall semester course. In a similar manner, the spring semester course is organized. In addition to lab reports, and as I mentioned in the previous, when demonstrating the Canvas, lab notebooks are important teaching tool in both courses. Notebooks have learning outcomes associated with them. We are aiming to develop good record keeping skills for professional lab settings. We're also teaching students to collect, organize, analyze, and communicate experimental results. So lab notebook is teaching tool, but also assessment tool. In addition to lab notebook, both courses use assessments to evaluate students' learning, and it's listed right here. But we concentrate on laboratory notebook. Laboratory notebook is used in the course in 3 instances: in pre-lab setting, in lab setting, and post-lab setting. So for the pre-lab, students are writing experimental protocol and setup, but they outline the procedure, calculate all the concentrations, amount, mass, volume, whatever is required to run the particular protocol. They prepare tables for data. In other words, they're coming into the lab with a lot of information written in a laboratory notebook. In lab, students are revising protocols, recording observations and measurements, and uploading relevant images. And after lab, students are calculating, analyzing data, calculating necessary stuff, graphing, and writing summary of what they can claim based on the experimental results they've got. Laboratory notebook is a teaching tool and valuable teaching tool only if feedback on a laboratory notebook could be frequent, focused, and timely. The courses I mentioned previously were using paper lab notebook. And when we were using paper lab notebook, we noticed that focused feedback was simply not possible. We could check for presence of experimental procedures, results, and conclusions only at a glance, because weekly collection of individual lab notebooks is simply not possible. And therefore, we had very limited ability to track students' progress. Generally, paper notebooks were collected at the end of the course for grading, and therefore the feedback they got had no teaching value. We also had unclaimed notebook accumulation, and students did not complete their notebooks in real time, filling in information just before the due date. So therefore, given all of these limitations of paper notebook and understanding that lab notebook is really, we're not using all of the teaching potential, we're looking into electronic lab notebook. Electronic notebook, lab notebook, we understood would give us weekly evaluations that are timely and focused. We students can organize content easily, and it would be easy for us to read, and also it would be very relevant for career in science industry with additional benefit of no paper use.
I'll continue here. More on the lab notebook. When selecting an electronic lab notebook, there were several key features that were of interest. For managing the course, we needed multiple sections. So as Natalya showed us in the beginning, when going to Canvas through the course syllabus, each student can use the hyperlink associated with their section to open up a new electronic lab notebook. We also needed teaching assistants to be able to be assigned to each multiple section. Another thing we were looking for was the allowance of instructors or TAs to comment on the entries in a student's lab notebook. And finally, the opportunity for instructors to post more material besides just the student notebook entries. Some official notebook features that we wanted were that the entries had a timestamp. So as opposed to the paper notebook where students were able to, at the last minute, rewrite or wait till the last minute before they handed in their lab notebook. This way we could keep track of how timely they were with putting their pre-lab, in-lab, and post-lab additions to each week's lab notebook. We also wanted identification of content creators, so who was putting in the information. That was very important, that students weren't sharing. We could see who was logged in and who was putting in the information, as well as revision history. So we could see if comments were made, were they making revisions, again, in a timely manner. Another thing that we looked at was we needed the software to work well on various devices. So these students would be in lab with iPads, but then when they went home and used their Mac or their PC, would this program work on all various devices with different operating systems? So that was something we needed also. And then finally, we wanted there to be common notebook entries, text, tables, images, flowcharts, graphs, being able to put in calculations. And actually the real final thing was that it was an affordable program that the students would all be able to participate in. Now I want to speak a little bit on the experience for the students. So as well as in a little bit, I'll talk about the instructors and TA's experience. But for the students, we find that many are first-time electronic lab notebook users. They've had paper notebooks in their prerequisite courses up until this point. So they're accustomed to paper, but many of these students are extremely tech savvy. So learning a new app would not be impossible. And we could fast track them by giving them a tutorial. So on the first meeting of the first semester in the fall, we give a tutorial to the students that has tips and tricks for lab archives, in particular, the electronic lab notebook that we were using. And then as we said prior, on the course syllabus, there are hyperlinks that take each student to the appropriate section for their lab notebook to sign up for. And then getting back to the tutorial, once the student is able to log into their lab notebook, this is what will appear for them. They will have the lab notebook on the left here with the way it's been set up, broken down into the weekly experiments. But what I want to show you on this page, most importantly, is if they scroll down on their welcome page, there is tons of support that the electronic lab notebook or lab archives provides for the students, in addition to the tutorial that we give them. There is a download quick start guide, there is a knowledge base, webinar training, and tech support. And as I said, they always do have the support from their instructors or TAs if they have any problems with navigation of the website. The instructor will set up the master course. So the master course is what each student sees, and it's organized by weekly folders here. And then within the weekly folders, there are pages that the students can add, and you can add more pages if you want to divide up your lab notebook into pre, in, and post pages, or however the student wants to set it up. So we do have a suggested entry format. So here you'll see introduction, date, title, experimental objectives. And this is all in the first week. A page has already been created for them that they can follow this outline, but the students are encouraged to create their own notebook organization system or improve upon the one that they've already been given. Actually, this shows what we offer the students for a suggested setup, but for the 413 course, which is their first semester of experimental biochemistry in the fall. And it's a much more detailed suggestion of how to populate their lab notebook with different entries. Now, again, these are suggestions and the students are able to modify. But one thing I will show you is that the students have the ability to enter rich text, attachments, office documents. They can put in mathematical equations, references. So this is a very nice lab notebook program that allows many different types of entries. For the course instructor or TA, you log into the lab archives, and when an instructor or TA logs in the top right corner, you'll see an icon that is the course manager. And if you click on the course manager, a student list will come up. And this is an individual section. So this is one of the sections that this TA is going to be observing. And there's some quick information on this first page with the amount of times the students have made entries or activity, and then the last time that they logged in. So this way we can kind of keep track of making sure that their pre-lab is done prior to entering the lab on any particular day. And then over to the right, there is an icon by each student that is a notebook. And if you click on that, that is the student's notebook. Then it will take you to an individual student's notebook, and it gives you a dashboard with a little more detailed information about revisions and history. But if you click on the left side where they have labs, then you can start to look at the entries that the students are putting in. So once you click on the labs, then you can open any particular week and look at any page, and then you are in the student's lab notebook looking at their individual entries. And we recommend to the students that they put in multiple entries. You could potentially just type a long entry that includes everything, including tables and images and whatnot, but we suggest to them that they break it up and start a new entry for each little section, so that way we can comment on each individual entry and give the students important feedback so that they can improve and perhaps make adjustments or corrections for their post-lab. This is an example of an electronic lab notebook entry. Here's a table that has been populated in lab with different calculations for concentrations or volumes or mass of different reagents that they would need to use. Here's an entry of a SDS page gel. They're able to write beneath the gel a figure caption and then some results. And this is really, really helpful when the student is putting together a lab report. They can just refer to their lab notebook and basically, with minimal extra work, put together a lab report based on this very highly organized lab notebook. So from the instructor's perspective, we find that the Lab Archives notebook is easy to set up and use. There has been improved learning progress monitoring, so we're able to view the student's lab notebook at any time. So instead of when paper was used, sometimes you can even use carbon copy, but with that, the students wouldn't get the comments or critiques till a week later. This way, we're able to immediately upon walking into the lab, the TA can start critiquing the lab notebook within one day. And then by the end of the week, when that lab is finishing up, they've already gotten comments, they've already made amendments and are ready to begin the next lab without having to go back in time and rework what could be done in real time. The students keep the notebook records up to date, so there's no neat rewriting, no end of the semester filling in of information in the notebooks. And finally, and one of the most important things, is that these are legible records. So many times in lab notebooks, in the paper variety, handwriting gets to be not so clean and difficult to follow. So that is how we have found this lab notebook to be very efficient.
Okay, so now I'm going to, given the instructor's perspective, we also collected some feedback, students' opinions on use of electronic lab notebook in the classroom and whether or not it benefits their learning. So first, the electronic lab book was used in spring of 2016 with 25 students and these 25 students were using paper notebook in the fall, and now in the spring they're using electronic notebook. So when we asked them what do you like the most about electronic laboratory notebook, students pointed out that it's easier to organize and edit information. It's convenient to access the notebook online anytime, easier to find information. And in addition, they're saying that some students were pointing out that they keep better record, and then image upload and print option, a couple of students like that. And so in the spring of 2016, first implemented, students were using their own electronic devices. And to the general question, to what changes would improve the use of electronic notebook in this course, students unanimously said class provided electronic device. So we had an opportunity to apply for School of Environmental and Biological Sciences Instructional Computing Fund grant in 2016, and we've got the grant, and we were able to purchase iPads, keyboards for the use in the lab. So every student is assigned the iPad for the lab session, and all iPads stay in lab. So we've got individual electronic devices that lab archives could be used with in the lab. And with that, with the bigger class then and iPads now in use, we asked students whether or not lab archives are easy to use. And majority of students, as you can see in this top figure here, are saying that it is easy enough platform to start using. This is supported also by the answer to the second question, whether or not they're using lab archives online help. And majority of students did not require the online help from lab archives. They were comfortable using the program. In addition to that, we asked whether or not their overall experience with lab archives and iPads was positive, and majority of students are saying that they were extremely or somewhat satisfied with the use of iPads and lab archives in the lab, and separately pointed out several advantages, such as more organized lab work, lab bench, no papers on the lab bench, that the electronic lab notebooks is easy, clear, and quick, the record of whatever they need to record. Easy image upload, finding information is easier, and anywhere data access. In addition, they were pointing out, of course, the camera and legibility. More recent data or feedback that was collected addressed asked students to describe their how do they feel that notebook, electronic lab notebook that we're using and how we're using it in the lab are actually benefiting their learning. And as shown in figure right here, the weekly protocol preparation before lab, majority of students are saying, out of 46 students, 27 are saying that the weekly protocol preparation actually benefiting their learning a great deal. And overall, majority of students are saying that yes, there is a benefit to learning. After lab, data analysis and summary is similarly positive in terms of benefit to the learning, or how students perceive the benefit to their learning from the lab notebook. From instructor's point of view or observations, we are, throughout the semester, from beginning to end, we are observing progress in abilities of students. abilities that we kind of group into communication, documentation, and presentation. So what we are noticing is that students are improving in writing concise experimental protocols that include relevant information, that they're able to define experimental objective, and they able to write conclusions based on data analysis. Also, we are observing that students are getting better and better throughout the semester at recording data and observations. Uh, Presentation wise, students are learning to format the data, and if we go into details, it's format of tables, its ability to choose the plot in which to show the data, its ability to format the graphs in terms of units and axes, and also ability to feed the data with either linear or non-linear regression. So all of these are observed benefits of having lab notebook where students are getting feedback almost immediately, and therefore able to make correction and make progress in how they organize or present their data. And in conclusion, I would like to show you this figure again at where students were answering the question, how much each of the following aspects of the course help your learning. I would like to point out that both online components such as notebook or posted materials or posted protocols, and in-class components such as lab work and weekly in-lab discussions are presented in the figure, and students are evaluating these both sides of the course as benefiting their learning. So in lab work, in the classroom work, and online materials are both evaluated as contributing to overall learning. And this sort of summarizes how the course materials, labs, assignment and assessments are fitted together. They are also satisfied with that. So that kind of evaluates organization of this course, where both online component and technology associated with it is playing very important role, and at the same time in classroom work is also important, and this integration of both sides are really beneficial to the overall learning experience in the course. Thank you. This is all we wanted to share with you about the technology in our experimental biochemistry courses.